Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome to the Run for God Run Club. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail, where you can, in turn, inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. Well, I am your running host, Dean Thompson, and boy, do we have a treat for you today. We have a guest who's going to share his story of physical struggle and the way God used it for good, as He does, right? And you're going to love it. I just know you will. And I'm going to share the importance of just showing up. Oftentimes, that's more than half the battle. So joining me in the studio this morning is David Rutledge. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks for having me here, and thank you, Mitchell, for giving up your chair so I could be here today.
He always says he doesn't mind a bit.
Exactly.
And that's all good. So, yeah. Well, welcome to downtown Cohutta.
Boy, I love it here. I'm just really taken aback. I could have sworn it'd be a little bit busier than that, but I just love it right here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's a great place. We love it.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, the big elephant in the room. Now, for people who listen to Thursday night, right?
Right.
If you're somebody who listens Thursday night, you probably, then you know who David is. But you see him chime in with these really odd comments occasionally on Thursday nights.
Right.
And
yeah.
Those comments you and I know very well.
Yeah.
Because they're typically related to an old rock group called Rush.
Right.
And we're both big Rush fans, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I appreciate those comments. And like I said, I'm sure everybody else looks up and goes, what in the world?
I'm sure. And I'm also sure that when they see me come in at 9 p.m., it's always got that message that says it's 9 p.m. Eastern time. Do you know where your antihistamines are? Some kind of crazy off-the-wall statement.
That's right. But it's fun. It's fun for sure.
Love it.
All right, let's talk about our sponsor for this week. Our sponsor for this week is Upward Sports. Of course, we are Upward Sports now. And in place of our normal sponsor spot, I just wanted to remind everybody that we are now part of the Upward Sports family. And we are so blessed, incredibly so. Over this coming year, you're probably going to see, if you're a regular listener to this podcast, you're probably going to see some changes. If you are a Run Club member, you are probably going to see some changes over the next year, and they're going to be great. So buckle in, because it's going to be fantastic, I am sure. All right, we had a Facebook post from last week from Jim Stimson. Again, if you know... if you're part of Run Club, you know who Jim is. He's from Lake Havasu, Arizona. And he says this: a little cooler this morning at 91 degrees. Fall is in the air. A really nice run. This summer has been the hottest summer since they started recording data back in the 1800s. Praising God for these warmer temps. Yes, I'm crazy. Donna got even with me today. She took this photo when I finished my run. Prayers for those preparing for the arrival of Hurricane Idalia. Of course, Idalia is gone and done its damage now, but
right. We're praying for those people down there.
Absolutely. So. Some still recovering.
Yeah.
But, of course, again, Jim and Donna, they live in Arizona, where it is, I don't know the last time he posted it wasn't over 100 degrees. Prior to this.
Probably February, maybe, when it was only in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah. But there's a few things about this post that I'd like to discuss. First, it's all about perspective, right?
Right.
Well, not all about perspective. A lot of it's about the heat, and heat is a real thing, and It does make running harder. But he's thankful for the heat. Imagine living where it's over 100 degrees and being thankful for the heat.
I mean,
what a great picture.
And it's hard, and I know for both of us, it's probably harder to imagine that, because living in the Southeast, we deal with the humidity all the time. Jim's out there in the desert dealing with the dry heat. I can't imagine what it would be like. I would think that it's almost like running in an oven, where it feels like your lungs are on fire.
Yeah, and that's true, and that's one of the things that's just different about about each one. But humidity can be dangerous in either case. Of course, when we run, we walk out the door and we start sweating.
Yeah.
Because of
because
the heat
it just
humidity.
hits you all of a sudden when you come out the door.
Right. But now when you're out west and you're in an environment like they are, sweat dries so fast because the air is so dry that it's pulling that moisture off of you really quickly. So you don't realize how much you're sweating.
And that could be really deceptive, I would imagine, because we automatically know what we have to do in order to keep our body regulated properly in the heat. Whereas out west, it's such a dry heat, you're not aware of it because, like you said, it evaporates off your skin the moment it comes, the moment you come in contact with it.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. And so what can happen is you can not drink enough because you don't realize how much you're sweating, right? And that could be dangerous. So
yeah, definitely.
It's just something to keep up with. Of course, I don't know about you. Have you started sweating more as you get older?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know why I sweat so much more than I used to. It's crazy.
Well, it's got to be the fact that as you get older, your metabolism changes so much, and it's looking for a way to regulate itself, and that's the only way it can do it more efficiently. We're maybe it's also because that in the lifestyle we live in these days, it's a little bit more sedentary. When we were kids, if you're like my mom and dad, if your parents were like my mom and dad, they kicked me out of the house and told me not to come back until dinner time.
True story.
Yeah.
True story. Yeah. Well, again, the thing about this is it's all about perspective. I know that it gets hard. I remember when I was in college and I had a roommate. He was from Delaware. And it wasn't nearly as hot and humid in Delaware as it is here. And so he came down here and he suffered. I mean, he had a hard time just running.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And he came and lived with me at my house for about a week before we moved into the dorms. And he struggled mightily. And he got acclimatized to it eventually.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I see so many people who go out there and listen, it's no skin off my back. If you want to run on a treadmill in the summertime, it's completely up to you.
Right.
But I see a lot of people who, if they gave it a chance to get used to running in the heat, they could.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be as bad. Now it's always going to be harder to run in the heat, but for so many people, they won't even try it.
I know. And I mean, you don't have to go out there and try and do a 10-mile run all at once. I mean, do it in increments. I mean, if you've got to run a mile and then stop for a couple of minutes and then continue on, by all means do it, because I mean, there are times where I'm on a long run and I'm bonking. I've got to stop. I mean, not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before that, it was like I was struggling getting through a 7-mile run and then just waved it off.
Yeah.
And then.
Well, they say it takes about 2 weeks to get yourself acclimatized to whatever your climate is.
Right.
And so, 2 weeks is not that long to suffer, to get to the point where it feels more comfortable. Mm-hmm. I have the choice. I could get up early in the morning and go run, and it would be much cooler, but I don't. I still run in the afternoon. Yeah. So partially because if I'm going to run with somebody, a lot of times it's with the high school kids, and of course their practice is in the afternoon. So I want to be used to it, but also I just don't mind running in the heat because I'm used to it. So
and I had a military background, so I was used to getting up early in the morning and doing the run first thing in the morning, because as I've said so many times on Thursday Night Live, the only way I could get those long distances is because my mind didn't have enough time to talk my body out of it.
That works out. All right. Well, we had a trivia question from last week. And the trivia question was, who is the track and field athlete with the most social media followers? This was such a fun question. I'm going to use Instagram followers as the baseline because that's probably a little bit easier to measure. But you would think that the most followed athlete would be somebody like Noah Lyles or Usain Bolt, Sha'Carri Richardson, maybe one of the Norwegian guys, but you'd be wrong.
Yeah, I know. It was like when I saw the answer to that, I was totally surprised. I had no idea. So
it's crazy when you look at it. The guy's name is Neeraj Chopra. He is a javelin thrower from India.
Yeah.
And so he's a great athlete, first of all.
Yes.
He just won the world championships.
Yeah.
So he's really good. He also seems to be a really nice, humble, good guy. Doesn't hurt either that he's a good-looking guy. I'm sure that helps him.
That carries a long way. So,
but he has 6.7 million followers on Instagram.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that. I mean, it was like how many. You would think that the track and field athletes would be like the sprinters or the hurdlers or somebody like that.
Yeah.
A javelin thrower. I mean, first of all, javelin is not a very well practiced discipline here in the United States.
Most people don't even know what the javelin is hardly.
Exactly. Yeah. They think it was an old car that was made in the 70s or something.
Well, I think the key to it is that he is from India, and in India, they don't have a ton of really high profile athletes.
Right.
And so this guy is, and so with 1 billion people, you're bound to get a lot of followers.
Right. And I thought and when I looked, when you think of famous athletes in India, most people think about the tennis player Vijay Amartraj.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a great tennis player, and then he did some cameo roles in a few movies, and it was like one of the favorite ones I had was in a James Bond movie. He was an agent for MI6 that was undercover as the tennis pro, and Bond asked him, it's like, well, what have you learned so far? I've learned that I've really improved my backhand. So
that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to know we'll look at the top 10. Number 2 is Alicia Schmidt. She has 3.7 million followers. 3 million behind Chopra. Turns out, as you can imagine, she is a very attractive lady. She's a middle distance runner from Germany. Athlete wise, she's a pretty good athlete, but nowhere near the level of a lot of these other athletes. It helps to be attractive, and some of these social media influencers know how to draw people to them, and she knows how to do that. And so
and I've got a friend in Germany that says that she also does some modeling on the side, so that helps a lot too.
Yeah, for sure. Number 3 is Sha'Carri Richardson. She's, an American
that one I would have
sprinter.
expected. Yeah.
That one I expected too. 2.2 million. She's a very outspoken lady, so she says some inflammatory things sometimes too. And of course, people love to follow the people who are sometimes controversial and sometimes funny.
Yeah. Now, the last time I heard she said something controversial, she got kicked off an airline flight. Yeah. So don't want to go there.
Number 4 is Eliud Kipchoge, the world's greatest marathoner.
That was the one at this point that I would consider to be the most popular.
Absolutely. Yeah, and he has 2.2 million followers.
Yeah.
And then Marcel Jacobs, the 100-meter world champion, has 1.1 million followers. He's from Italy.
Yeah.
Sydney McLaughlin-Lavroni, of course, is from the United States.
Yes.
She's also a very outspoken Christian. She has 1.1 million followers, and she's next. Yeah. And then Fred Curley has 1 million followers. Fred Curley is the last year's world champion in the 100 meters.
Right.
And then the next one's interesting. She's a triple jumper from Venezuela. She has 1 million followers. Yulimar Rojas. She is so much fun to watch. If you've never watched the triple jump, she's worth the price of admission just to watch her. Yeah. She's really animated. She gets fired up, and she's vocal, and she's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, and this is the one on the list I had never heard of before. So now I'm going to have to go back and rewatch the World Championships.
Well, the World Championships, she had an interesting day at the World Championships because she's the best in the world and has been, and she never loses, right?
Right.
Well, in the World Championships, she was, I think, 3rd place going into her final jump.
Uh-huh.
And then, of course, on our final jump, she just explodes, saved it. She won. Yeah, really some high drama there.
Yeah.
The last 2 are Shelly Ann Fraser-Price, the Jamaican sprinter, and then Trayvon Bromell, who's a U.S. sprinter. That one surprised me. I know who Trayvon Bromell is, but that one surprised me that he was in the top 10.
Yeah, now Shelly Ann Fraser-Price, I mean, I think
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. I think she's well known for as much as her vibrant hair colors.
Yes,
so.
yes. And she's such a nice lady.
She is. I mean, every interview, she just has so much charm and grace.
She does, for sure.
Do you struggle with motivation to exercise? Are you looking for something that will challenge you and inspire and motivate you? The Run for God Run Club is just what you need to get off the couch and on your way to a fitter, healthier you. Stop trying to get into better shape and do it with the help and inspiration of thousands of others who are going through the same challenges you face. Whether you are participating in the Couch to Marathon Challenge or any of our other challenges, or you're just looking for a daily pick-me-up to get active, join the Run for God Run Club today. You can join for as little as 27 cents a day. So what are you waiting for? Get started today at runforgod.com.
All right, we're back. And of course, David is here and he's sharing his story. And we know that there are tons of... Now, it took you a long time, right? You talked about sharing your story a while back.
Yeah, better part of a year.
Yeah.
So
and finally got around to doing it. So I know there's others out there just like this.
Yeah.
And
I mean, and it took a year for God to give me the right words to put out there. So it's like, don't struggle with it, people. Just let it come to you. God will tell you what to say.
He will. He absolutely will. So we need to hear more stories. So submit your story at runforgod.com. We've got kind of a template, helps you you have to write your story, obviously, but then there's some ways to put in some scripture references and questions. And anyway, we just need more stories because that's what this podcast is all about.
Yeah, I love to listen to them. I mean, it's like... one of the most recent ones was Seth Christensen.
Yeah.
And I've met him a couple of times, and he's a great guy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. So tell us what you do for a living, David.
I work as an IT network technician for CoreLogic.
Oh, you're one of those guys.
I'm one of those guys, yeah. So, what I do is I help real estate agents, appraisers, brokers with software that we provide for the real estate industry and troubleshoot the program for them if they run into any problems.
Well, interesting. So when did you start running?
Well, technically, I've been running all my life. The problem is it was chasing a soccer ball around. But I really started getting into just the running aspect of it 13 years ago because I was, the soccer was finally taking its toll on my knees, and it was like I needed something to, I needed to stay in shape. I've always liked running. I gave it a shot, and it was like I've stuck with it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So you started about the same time Run for God started.
Yeah. Just didn't realize that Run for God was an active group 13 years ago.
Right. So what's your favorite distance to run? Do you have a favorite?
Usually I prefer the middle distances, anywhere between 10K and a half.
Okay.
It just seems like that. I like having the longer distances. I just don't like going too long.
Yeah, I get it for sure. So have you run a marathon?
No, I haven't,
Okay.
and that's one of the issues with it. My testimony is going to be part of that, so it'll explain it from there.
All right. Do you have a favorite workout, the stuff that you like to do, or?
Yeah, it's like we've made comments about my demeanor several times. Like right after the Hawkins 10K fundraiser this year, everybody's made this comment. It's like, oh yeah, he's crazy. He's not fully centered, and my favorite workouts do actually frame that out to a T because I love doing the tempo runs and the hill climbs.
Oh, great.
And yeah, and I mean, it's like everybody complains about the tempo runs, but I have learned that by doing the tempo runs, it keeps me focused on evening out my runs so I don't go out too fast at the beginning of runs. And it's really been a big help. And of course, the hill runs, that's where I really get crazy because I try and go all out, for like about 500 meters at a time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a long hill climb.
It is. Yeah.
Man.
Got lots of them there. So
yeah, you do. You're in that area of the country for sure. Okay. So you've been through some stuff recently, and this story is going to tell us a little bit about that. So let's go ahead and tell your story.
Okay. Yeah. So I called mine. I trained for this, and here's what happened. It's December 2022, and I'm really amped up. I ran a great half marathon in Greensboro at the Cannonball, and now I'm running my best times leading up to the big beach marathon. When one morning on the treadmill, I fainted just short of a mile into an 8-mile run.
Oh.
So it's like after my wife shut the treadmill down, I got up, went to see my family doctor. They did an EKG, and then they said, we better send you to a heart specialist. So off to the specialist I go. I get to the specialist, and they do more tests on me in the office, and they said, well, everything seems to be okay right now, but based on that fainting, I would recommend you don't run anything over 12 miles right now. So that ended Big Beach for me that year. So it's like, no problem. I'll just get ready for the Run for God 5K. So in the meantime, I get scheduled for a battery of heart tests, and then I got hit with another really bad illness because after I did a stress test, one day after I got off work, I noticed my fingers and toes started tingling. My blood pressure had dropped really bad, and my pulse had gone really up. So I go to my doctor. They diagnosed me with a urinary tract infection. They gave me antibiotics, told me to come back the next day. And then I got back to the doctor the next morning, and it was like, this isn't getting any better. You better go to the hospital for some tests. So I go and have all these tests, all the blood work, all the urinary, all the urine tests, all this CAT scan, and then they tell me that I'm septic and I've got a 1/2-inch kidney stone. So they bring in another specialist, a urologist, and he tells me, you need to get an operation or you're going to die. Well, my reaction was, what are you doing here? Get upstairs and get prepped, So, yeah. But it was a real struggle. So after 6 weeks of going out of hospitals for operations and heart tests, I kept thinking, one thing kept going through my mind. I trained for this? During all that time of inactivity and recovery, I had plenty of time to reflect on what was going on in my life. And, it was like, okay, God, what are you telling me? I was going to church, but I didn't have a church home at the time. I was in the Bible in a year devotion, so that kept me focused on that during my stay in the hospital. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't sure how much of it I was retaining because even though I was reading it on the side as well, I didn't know how much I was retaining it by listening to it. So it appeared that God was telling me something through all of that, that I was focusing on form and function with my running and not with true purpose, which was spreading the gospel.
Yeah.
It was a struggle getting back into running shape, but eventually I got back on it. Now I'm closer to God because of all of that, but it was kind of a stark reminder of what He had to do to pull me back in. Mm-hmm. But now I'm focused more on the spiritual and the physical aspects of my run on the Run for God ministry.
God will get your attention, won't He?
In a hurry, yes.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's a great story. It's a tragic story at the same time. I mean, just all of a sudden, it's like you go from everything's great to everyth's not great.
Yeah, and it doesn't take that long. That was what the surprising part of it was.
And isn't it tough when you train so hard for something, you get yourself into good shape, and then something like that pops up?
Yeah, but it was like God said, you're ready for the big shakeup. All right, you're healthy enough to get through it. Now let's see how good you are about getting through it.
Yeah.
So
what happened with the fainting? What was that all about? Did you ever figure that out?
The cardiologist said that he thought that it was some kind of a congenital heart issue going on, that I had scar tissue on my heart. And that's why they ran me through all the tests, but things just didn't show that it was a heart test. There was a heart issue. They did the stress test, first of all, before I got really sick. And with a stress test, they put you on an incline treadmill, run you for, and have you walk on it for 12 minutes.
Yeah.
And the criteria is you either get through all the 12, through the entire 12 minutes, or, you get to a trigger point. Usually that's about 140 beats per minute.
Yeah.
I got through the 12 minutes and never got close to 140 beats. So it was like, I didn't think it was a health issue at that point in time, but they wanted to go ahead and do the CAT scan. They also wanted to do a heart cath to see if I was, see if I had coronary artery disease.
For sure.
I'm sitting there and it's like, really? And I was just about ready to say no to that. And then my wife, Debbie, said, you better go ahead and do that. And I said, oh yeah, that's right. And she reminded me because at 58, which is how old I was at the time, her father was diagnosed with coronary artery disease. So I went ahead and did the test anyway. So I didn't want to worry her about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is a really good cautionary tale for all of us.
Yes,
because
definitely.
You just never know. I mean, things could be rocking and rolling and everything's great. And then the next day, you're struggling. And,
well, I mean, look at the football player that hit the ground because of a heart attack just because he took a hit during Monday Night Football. Yeah. I mean, if that doesn't wake you up, nothing does.
That's a good point. Good point. Mm-hmm. Yes, the way you describe this story, though, it sounds a little bit like, I've told the story before about missing one day. I've only missed one day in the last 12 years, and I remember struggling with that at first and thinking, what in the world is going on? How in the world did I do such a boneheaded thing? But then once I kind of drew back from that and calmed down, it was like, okay, God, what are you trying to tell me?
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's where you were here. It was
exactly.
What are you trying to tell me, God?
Yeah, and I had plenty of time to think about it because, there was, you had plenty of time to think about it because it seemed like every 2 hours somebody was coming into the room and they were doing some kind of test on you. And I get that. And I thank God that those people are dedicated to try and help me get back on my feet and back out on the road. So
for sure. Well, we had a scripture passage from Isaiah 38, 16 and 17. It says, Lord, by such things people live, and my spirit finds life in them too. You restored me to health and let me live. Surely it was for my benefit that I suffered such anguish. In your love, you kept me from the pit of destruction. You have put all my sins behind your back. And then you went on to say, even when I'm either physically or spiritually sick or struggling, God is always ready to help raise my spirit.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to know that, even when you think that everything is going against you and you don't think that there's a way to get out of it, God is always there to provide you with not only hope, but a way to get out. You just have to sit there and listen and look for the signs.
Yeah. Well, we've always said that getting outside of your comfort zone is it's the only way you grow is outside your comfort zone. So, it's good. Of course, most of the time when we get outside our comfort zone, it's something that we choose, right? We choose to get outside of our comfort zone. In this case, you're not choosing it.
No, I'm not at all. It was like suddenly I'm thrown into this area, and it's like suddenly I'm in, I'm suddenly having to trust someone else outside my, that I've never met before or ever come in contact with. And that's a scary thought. It's like suddenly you've got to put your faith, you've got to put your faith and your trust in a total stranger maybe.
Yeah.
But the thing is that if you submit to it, you actually get connected with those people and you feel a whole lot better for it.
Yeah. It makes such a huge difference.
Yeah.
But I guess, God knows what's good for us. And we go through these things where we don't understand why in the moment, right? So it's like when I was unemployed and I went through that process of being unemployed, and you get to a point where you get pretty low, and then boom, all of a sudden. So was yours like that? Was it like it just hit you all of a sudden that, oh, hey, God's trying to get my attention. This is the way He's done it. I need to start paying attention.
Yeah, it was like falling off a cliff into a pool of water, but there are rocks somewhere at the bottom of it, and you don't know where they are. So it's like gravity works. Let's hope for the best,
So was that before or after the surgery that you kind of hit that realization?
That was probably before the surgery.
Okay.
Because I'm sitting here, and when the doctor said, you need this operation or you're going to die, this hit me right. It's like, well, let's get ready for this, and then the next thing I did was I picked up my cell phone and called my son and said, hey, I'm not making this up. I could really die if I don't get this operation. Can you please get up here and be with your mom, keep her company while I'm going through this?
Yeah. That's a tough phone call to make.
Right. It is.
Well, you mentioned that you didn't have a church home at that time. Did you find a church home at this point?
Well, at the time of recording, and this is Labor Day, we're really comfortable with a local church, and we're starting to go to Sunday school classes because the pastor said most of ministry work in this church comes through being in a Sunday school class.
Absolutely.
And we've started going to a Sunday school class, and we feel really comfortable with it. I mean, the first time we walked in there, it's like all of a sudden people just started, we're really glad to see you here. Welcome. Hope you enjoy this, So that welcome is a big part of it.
That's great. So. Romans 5:3-5 says, and not only that, but we also glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope. Now, hope does not disappoint, because the love of God has been poured out in our hearts by the Holy Spirit who was given to us. And then you go on to say, suffering and going through tough tests of endurance is how God has transformed me during my Christian walk, and it encourages me to seek tougher challenges. What good is any goal if it's too easy? That is such a great question. I love that. You're right. An easy goal is not good.
Right.
We need hard goals for sure. Yeah. And I think we're losing the ability to have tough goals. I don't want to get off on a political rant here, but this atmosphere, I've talked about it before, the atmosphere of safetyism, where we're so scared to get outside of our comfort zones, and we're so we were talking about it the other day about how we have on cross-country teams, on high school cross-country teams, kids don't want to run hard anymore. And it's because they don't see the value in trying to be the best they can be at something. And a lot of that is because they've been told their whole lives that just participating is great. And in some cases, just participating is great. Right. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes that's not your best. Sometimes participation is your best. Sometimes participation's not your best. And unfortunately, I think that is going down to these cross country runners. That's the way they're brought up.
Yeah, and I feel like that we're kind of like dinosaurs now on this, because I'm going to use a rush ism here, For a lot of people who get involved in running, it's the engine that drives itself, but it chooses the uphill climb.
Yep. Yeah. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
One of these issues is heat. We're hearing, people talk about heat. People are afraid they're going to die if they go out and they run in the heat. And it's the high schools, they won't let them practice if it's too hot outside. And the truth is, and I shared this on a podcast not too long ago, that more people die from cold than they do heat.
Yeah. I mean, cold is very deceptive. Heat, you know exactly what you're getting into. Yeah. And, this is the time of the year, especially down here in the South, where the heat conditions you. You've said it many times before. Humidity is the poor man's altitude training. And believe me, the last month or so, I've been through a lot of altitude training, and even though that I've been absolutely worn out sometimes to points where I can't finish a run, I know in the end, when we get into the sharp end of the Couch to Marathon program, for example, it's going to be so much better because, for instance, last year when we were all at the Cannonball Half Marathon, the training through that entire summer made us that much stronger because remember, there were a lot lot of people that hit some personal bests that day.
They did. They did. That's true. That's true. Yeah, I blame the whole negative thoughts on whether it be heat or anything else. Natural disasters is a good example.
Oh, yeah.
You hear everybody's talking about how bad natural disasters are getting, and the truth is natural disasters are not getting worse. And the truth is that we have 90% less death due to natural disaster today than we did 100 years ago.
I saw that statistic and it just floored me.
Yeah, but the reason we don't know that is because our news is busy scaring us to death all the time.
And it's also on a constant 24-hour circle, so it keeps getting you and getting you and getting you. One of the jokes that my son and I did when we first started watching the news when the COVID pandemic came up, it was like, you would see these national anchor people come on there and say, tonight's news, and it was like all of a sudden, my son James and I would just go, doom,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's true. But you remember when you and I were growing up, you had a couple of hours of news during the day total for the entire 24-hour period.
Yeah, maybe noon and 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Or 6 p.m., I'm sorry.
Yeah. And if you stayed up late, 11 p.m.
Yeah, right.
But it's not that way anymore.
No, it's not. I mean, you're constantly inundated with bad news. I mean, it's like no wonder people are walking around in such a funk.
Well, what gets me is that I hear people say it all the time that, well, we need somebody to have news that's good news. Well, they've tried that. There have been some news organizations who have tried to do just good news, and nobody watches it.
Yeah.
So we're so drawn to bad news for some reason.
Yeah. My old soccer coach over in Germany, they have a phrase in German called Schadenfreude. And if it loosely translated, it means taking pleasure in someone else's tragedy. And unfortunately, we revel in that for some reason.
Yes, we do.
It's human, I guess.
I guess so. Psalm 41:3 says, "The Lord will strengthen him on his bed of illness. You will sustain him on his sick bed." And you said, even when I'm feeling terrible physically, I know by placing my faith in God, I know I will be healed. Yeah, I mean, God tells us he's going to take care of us. So it's sort of like our whole life journey, right? It's not just about these individual issues, but and sometimes we get healed, and sometimes the answer is not you're going to get healed.
Yeah.
I mean,
sometimes you're carrying that wound for everybody else to see, so they won't have to go into that issue.
That's right. Yeah. But the important thing is, that we put our faith and our trust in him. That's what you did in this case.
I had no choice.
But it's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It really is, because you're sitting there lying there and it's like, well, what if I don't recover?
Yeah.
What if I don't feel as good as I did, today as I did like 2 weeks ago when all this started?
Yeah. So how do you keep your faith when things are going south like that?
Fortunately, I have a wife that, keeps me centered on this, because a lot of times I will, and she will tell you this, I will go through and I'll just rant and rave about how lousy things are, and she says, well, look at it this way, what other way is there to look at it? It's like, you could have been in a whole lot worse situation. You could have died from all of this, or you could have been seriously injured if, instead of just having a sprained ankle or something. Yeah, you're right. It's like it'll take me time to get down from that, the 2-hour funk.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure. Question 1. What kind of reminders do you see every day in your life that makes you push yourself to be a better Christian? Then you followed with saying the metal in the floorboard.
Yeah, now this is a true story. 2 years ago, I went to a place called Jonesboro, Tennessee, ran a half marathon there. And I had been training pretty well, but the weather conditions at that point in time were pretty much what you expect down here in the Southeast in late September, mid-October, that window, because usually the humidity finally lets up a little bit and you see that brilliant cobalt blue sky over you. And it was like, every day is a great day to run at that point in time. Well, the week of that half marathon, it started raining, and it was raining constantly for 2 or 3 days. And I kept thinking about it. And it was like, oh man, this is not going to be that great a day to run. I got up that Saturday to go to the race, and it was still raining really hard. And it was like, I'm not going to like this. But as I was going up, and this Jonesboro is like 45 minutes north of where I live.
Yeah.
So as I was driving, it got better and better and better.
Wow.
And it was like the rain had stopped, the cloud cover had lifted a little bit. It was like the perfect day, cloudy and 45 degrees. I thought this isn't going to be so bad after all. We get up on the line, and the moment that starter pistol went off, a monsoon came, and it stayed all during the race, and I got into a real funk. I was not happy. At one point, towards the end of the race, I think it was about the 11-mile mark or something like that, we were going down a busy street in Jonesboro, and this big pickup truck with a trailer hit the pothole. And you know how Murphy's second law is. It's like no matter where you are, the water's going to hit you. Yeah. And it did. And I got home, so when I got done with the race, it was like they handed me of course, they handed you the finisher's medal. And usually I'm real happy getting one of these. I took it off and, stuffed it in my bag along with my wet clothes and all this stuff. So when I got home, I took all my wet clothes off, put them in the washing machine and all this stuff. And then I noticed in the bag, looked down in the bag, and it's like, where'd that finisher's medal go? I couldn't find it anywhere, and it was like, I went through all that pain and suffering to get this medal. It's like, you're darn right I'm going to find it. It was in the bottom of the floorboard in the back seat of my car. It's been there for 2 years. It has never been picked up.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, and here's the reason, because I was in a real nasty mood when I got done.
Yeah.
And I didn't shine my light.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
Uh-huh.
I was cross, I was ill, I was angry, and I kept it in that floorboard, and it stays there as a reminder up to this day that I need to be a better Christian, I can be a better Christian, and I will be a better Christian. And that medal is a reminder. It's never been picked up.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I like that. That's an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like to think about the Israelites. They had so many great things to look back on, and we wonder, they had the Red Sea and the manna and the pillar of fire and all that stuff. And we wonder, how in the world did they stray away from God, having seen all of that stuff? But the truth is we have our own Red Sea moments ourselves. Yeah. Now, it may not be as fantastic as the sea parting and walking through it, but we have those moments in our lives where God shows up in a big way, and we know He's there, and yet we still tend to pull back.
Yeah, and just like the Israelites, we still wander around in the desert for 40 years.
Yeah, yeah. So we have to look back on those moments. We have to, just like you're keeping more of a negative moment, but something that reminds you to do something positive.
Right.
And you're keeping that by preserving a moment in time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the same thing that we should be doing, whatever that thing is that motivates us to be better as Christians.
Right.
Whatever that thing is that reminds us of that, we need to have that in front of us so that we can constantly be reminded to go back to where God wants us to be. Another question: how do you respond when a total stranger asks you about your testimony?
Boy, and this is the hard one right here, because we're talking about a total stranger.
Yeah.
I'll give you an instance on this. I got caught totally by surprise one Sunday after church. Went to the local convenience store because my wife and I were really craving a fountain drink. And as I was leaving, this gentleman comes up, and I'm wearing this exact shirt, this same shirt as I was leaving that day. And the guy asked me, it's like, what is Run for God Club? And it was like, oh my gosh, this is a real actual moment here where I'm going to have to explain this. And I said, okay, you kind of caught me by surprise, but here's the thing. I explained to him what the Run for God Run Club was all about, spreading the ministry through the sport of running.
Yeah.
And tried to explain to him all the things that were going on. And then he asked me about my personal ones. What got you drawn into this? I said, well, when I was 6 years old, my father was getting baptized, and I was absolutely struck with total terror and fear, because my dad explained to me as a way of saying, baptism is a way where part of you dies, and it was like, that's the only part I heard.
Yeah.
And I was just absolutely terror stricken. My
my
dad's going to
goodness.
drown right in front of my eyes, and then it was like, I was crying in the backseat of the car all the way to church that, during that Sunday, on the way to that Sunday evening service when he got baptized. Then when they pulled him out of the water, when they dunked him in the baptistry and then pulled him out, it was like, a great thing was lifted out, and it was like, then I saw something different in my dad.
Wow.
He all of a sudden had more time for me and my brother and mom. And it turned out to be such a pleasant thing that that the next revival came along, it's like my dad said, it's like, you didn't let your shirt tail hit your back all the way down there, did you? I said, no. That was my come to Jesus moment, as we all say down here.
Yep.
Literally.
Wow.
That one example made me feel such like felt transformed. And this guy with Run for God, when he saw the T-shirt, saw the same thing, and when he heard that, it's like, how do I join? And it was like, I grabbed his phone and I said, well, here's the address right here. Here's the URL that you go to. All you got to do is sign up.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe I had a guy signed up coming out of a convenance store with 2 soft drinks in my hand. So, that was great.
That's good stuff.
Yeah,
That's good stuff.
it is.
Well, this all goes back to, in week 9 of the 5K, all of our challenges, we talk about your testimony and we try to get people to think about it. Because very often when we're confronted with it, if we haven't thought about it ahead of time, then we're not going to know what to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I remember back when I was in the corporate world, they used to tell us that you should have kind of a very quick speech, an elevator speech they used to call it, where if you ran into somebody who could have a profound impact on your career and you were in the elevator with them, riding up an elevator for a minute, what would you say?
Yeah.
And so they wanted us to think about that and be ready for that moment. Well, this is no different.
No, it's not.
Being ready to share your testimony, what God's done for you, it kind of goes back to the same thing I was talking about a few minutes ago, where it's all about what has God done in my life. And if I can share those moments where God has had this big impact in my life, then that has an impact on others.
Yeah. And, the other thing is a lot of people try and rehearse this, and there's no rehearsing it. You're going to stutter, you're going to falter a little bit, but that's part of it. Just tell them what's on your heart.
Well, that's what freezes us a lot of times, is the thought that, well, I can't do it perfectly.
Yeah.
And if I can't do it perfectly, then I don't want to do it at all. Well, God uses imperfect people.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a process.
That's right.
Because it's like, you may not be the guy who transforms them. It's going to take 10 or 11 more people, as we all know.
That's right.
So,
That's
it's
right.
like, just be honest about it. Be forthright. You're going to stumble. You're going to get nervous. It's like, I'm getting sweaty armpits talking about it right now. But yeah, that's just the way it goes.
That's the way it goes. Last question. How do you respond when you or someone you know is going through a physical, spiritual, or emotional situation? Well, I'd say hopefully I go straight to God with it. If it's me, of course, most of the time, that's not the case. Most of the time I bounce around with other stuff before I finally take it to God and go, God, where do I need to go with this? Well, but hopefully that's our default, is to go there.
Yeah. And the other thing is that one of the things that you keep hearing constantly from other Christians is, it's like, I'm going to pray for you about it.
Yeah.
Which is almost like a backing away from it. Like when someone says it is what it is, that gets me so tore up.
Yeah.
I can't stand that phrase.
Yeah.
A good example of this is a coworker of mine suffered a physical loss. He lost a leg through an amputation.
Wow.
And, it's like, And I'm not going to sit there telling him, I'm going to pray for you about it. It's like, tell me what you're going through on this, and he does explain it, and I constantly pray for him, and he always is very, very, we kind of like sharpen each other through all of this because I've been through an amputation process. He's been through an amputation process, and I have the advantage of being able to tell him what it's like. Now, I can't tell him exactly what it's like, but I can tell him, it's going to be a struggle. But if you rely on, one of the things is your friends are going to be one of the things that you're going to fall back on. And I hope that through the experience that I've been through, it's going to help you get through yours. And apparently it's worked because, he is really progressing well, because it's like, you're going to have to, you're going to be in a funk. You're going to be disappointed at things sometimes, but you got to push through. And I've been through it. You can get through it.
It's always amazing how God will put folks in front of us who are going through the same things that we've gone through.
Yes.
So that we can help them. I mean, I'm convinced that's why they're in our lives.
Yeah.
People like that.
Yeah. And I mean, sure, you're going to screw up at times. You're going to, you may, it's like, and I keep telling them, it's like sometimes I give bad advice, but I'm glad you have you have the rationale and the intelligence to get around it. So.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. Yes, it's good. We should be praying for folks, and we should. And there's nothing wrong with saying I'm praying for you, but we need to do a little more than that.
You have to be really active in helping them out. I mean.
Yeah, and being a coach, I deal with it all the time. People come to me and of course, coaching at the high school level, I have kids come to me with running questions, but they come with life questions too.
Yeah,
and spiritual questions, and it's great opportunity. But instead of one of the things that I like to do, I don't always do, but if the situation lends itself to this, instead of saying I'll pray for you, I say let's pray.
Yeah,
let's pray right now.
Yeah,
and I think that's a good way to show your compassion for whatever it is that person's going through.
Right. And I mean, it's like one of the things that you can always get through. I mean, it's like, don't feign interest. Ask them, what can I do for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And mean it.
Yeah.
Would you like to experience the Bible in a different way than you've ever done before? Well, you can join me, Coach Dean, as I read through the entire Bible every day for a full year. You don't want to miss hearing this transplanted Southern boy try to pronounce those biblical names now, do you? It may be good for a laugh. In addition, I share running and walking tips and some inspirational quotes along the way. Get your daily dose of the Bible from a runner's perspective in the Run for God Run Club, a walk through the Bible. You must be a member of the Run Club to get access. So if you're not a member, join today. If you are a member, just find a walk through the Bible under the Nationwide Challenge tab.
All right, we're back, and I'm still here with David Rutledge, and we are talking about all sorts of things running, and we just covered your story, but let's talk a little bit about, how about running shoes? What kind of running shoes do you use?
Usually what I do, and this is kind of crazy, well, not too crazy, but it's like every 2 years or so, what I'll do is I'll go into a shoe store and I'll grab every pair of shoe that's in my size and try them on. But it seems like every time I go and do this, I stay with the same ones. I go with the Asics Magic Speeds.
Okay.
So
those are the ones you like.
Yeah, right. Those are the ones I've got 6 pairs of them right now. So
yeah, oh, good, good. Well, that's some people like to switch it up. I'm once I find something I like, I stick with it myself. Yeah. So that's what I do. I had probably about 40 pairs of Saucony Kinvaras.
Yeah,
and then I had about 40 pairs of Saucony Freedoms, And then I recently, this is actually on my feet right now, my first pair of New Balance Rebels.
Yeah.
It's the first time I've worn, but they discontinued the Saucony Freedom, so I had to find something else.
When we came in this morning, I did notice that you were, and I'm used to seeing you in Sauconys.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but they, like I said, they quit making them, so I had to try something else. I found something else, and so now, if somebody from Saucony's listening to this, just know I didn't switch because I wanted to. I switched because I had to.
Yeah.
Yep. So how many miles do you get out of a pair of shoes?
Because I rotate them around.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah, but it was like I was looking at them, and right now I'm on about 300 miles on the oldest pair that I've got right now, and I can squeeze 400 or 500 miles out of them.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
So I like to get at least 500 out of mine. I feel like most of the time they're good for that. Now it depends on the shoe. Some shoes last longer than others.
Yeah.
Those Saucony Freedoms that I wore, I swear to you, it used to be when I wore the Kinvaras. Whenever I got a new pair and I put those on and I ran in them, I was like, oh, that feels so much better.
Yeah.
With the Freedoms, I can't tell a difference. Like the cushioning never wears out of those shoes.
Yeah.
And so, but they've discontinued it. So. Right.
And the other thing is I try to be very savvy about how I buy my, how I go and do those.
Yeah.
Now I may pay full price for the first pair that I get, and then I get in there and I start looking around and trying to see if 6-8 months later on, if you see if I can find something at a discount. And it's not a bad thing to do that, because it's like I can pay $50 for the same pair of shoes a year and a half later, and they still feel the same as the others.
Yeah.
It's not a shameful thing to do.
Yeah. It just depends on what you've got. It is great to support your local running shoe store if you can.
Yeah, and I do try that.
For a lot of people don't have that option.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people have to drive. They may have to drive for an hour or two just to get to a running shoe store. So once they find some, then they just continue. Use something similar.
And Debbie had its problem. She's had a lot of problems with heel pain recently. And the last time she got a pair of shoes, she went all the way to Kingsport, which is about an hour and a half away from where we are. And went to I guess it was Fleet Feet, and someone helped her there and really helped her out with that situation. Now she's wearing Hoka's right now, and she likes them because they do have a lot of cushion in them.
Good.
The shoes I wear don't have that kind of cushion because I like contact with the road.
Yeah.
So
it's all preference.
Yeah.
So what about your diet? Are you strict on your diet?
No, I'm not real strict about it. It's like Friday nights, if it's red meat and Mexican food, I'm there.
Yeah.
Right. But I eat, I've tried going with a plant-based diet like you do.
Yeah.
And it kind of it was like, to me, it was like things are a little different. Things kind of taste kind of funny.
Yeah.
I'm the protein and red meat guy. It's like I'll eat a steak the day before a race just because I can.
Yeah.
But it feels good for me.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Good. Whatever works. So do you have any running goals right now?
Yeah. I'm currently trying to get down below 210 on half marathons.
Okay.
Marathons, I would just like to get in one and finish it.
Yeah.
Normally when I run a 10K, I try to get down below an hour, but if I can get between a 50 and a 53, I'm really, really happy.
Okay.
Getting back to where I am right now is kind of tough. I've found out that it's not my heart, it's not my legs, it's my lungs that are giving me the problem right now. So it's like earlier this summer, went up to Cove Lake and ran with Team Coolidge in the Cove Lake 5K, and I was trying to get below 32 minutes at that point in time, and I did it. So I'm good with that. I'm trying to get down below 30 now.
Good. So what's your favorite race you've ever run?
I used to run one every year up in Kingsport. It was the Eastman 10K, and it was basically it was a fast race. It did have one huge hill in the 5 and 6 kilometer marks of that race.
Yeah.
And it used to be the hardest thing for me to get up. And then it was like the third try, I finally got it.
Yeah.
And And it was like I stopped, and it was like I turned around and looked at the hill. It was like, I finally beat you. I am done with you. I've beaten you. And now it's just a walk through the park.
Good stuff.
And really it was, because like the rest of the race, it was downhill to the finish. But still, it was a great race because Eastman and a grocery store chain subsidized most of the race, so everybody could run for $10.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
and it was like you got the usual swag. You got the finisher's medal. You got the you got the T-shirt. You even they even gave you free running socks out of that deal. So
wow.
it was a different way to go about things, and it was so good. But I think it was about 4 years ago they quit sponsoring the race now. But
now it's like all the other races.
Yeah,
I guess.
it ran its course, and it was like they decided it wasn't the thing to go about anymore. We can't do this. They discontinued it, even though there's still some good races up there. I think there's one up there today. Yeah, and while we're recording this, it is Labor Day. A lot of Labor Day races are going on, and that was the weekend they always had that race.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. There's a race that I've run on Labor Day, probably 13 of the last 14 years that I'm not running today.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm just getting over this little injury thing,
Right.
so I wasn't going to run it anyway. So it worked out great.
Yeah.
But I'll be back at it next year. It's a race sponsored by FCA, so I like to support them.
Right.
So what if you couldn't run any races? Would you still run?
Yeah, I'd still run. I
Yeah.
mean, it's so ingrained as part of my life now.
Yeah.
I'm not to the point where if I don't run, I'll die. But I do enjoy it. I can see the benefits in it because it's like if I run before work in the morning, I get home, I feel more alert. I feel like I do my job a lot better. So I'm not giving up running anytime soon.
Oh, good. Well, it's a time for Dean's Thoughts, and that's a time when I share something that I've written about the intersection between running and faith. Sometimes just showing up is important, and that's why this one's called Showing Up. Hard is relative. What is easy for me may be hard for you. What is easy for you may be hard for me, and we have to do both the easy and the hard. I would say it falls under the proverbial 80-20 rule. 80% of what you do should be easy and 20% should be hard. Of course, there are many levels of hard and different kinds of hard. Working through the emotions of a death in the family is completely different than finishing a marathon. Both are hard, but not in the same way. But the important thing is that we all keep showing up to do the things we should be doing. We're working to be productive members of society. We're working to be helpful to those around us. We're working to be the best version of ourselves we can be. And, of course, we're working to execute the plan God has for our lives. It takes relentless pursuit to work towards any goal, whether that goal is to finish a half marathon or get a report done for work. Again, the important thing is that we keep showing up. Our life journey implores us to help those who are behind us on their paths and to learn from those who are ahead on theirs. We all have different circumstances, and we're all in a different place. We may be part of a group working towards a common goal, but none of us feel the same every day as the others in our group. I battle the heat of the summer living in the South, while someone at the same stage as me may have to fight feet of snow in the winter. I may be dealing with a hamstring issue while someone else tries to get through a calf strain. I could go on, but you get the point. We're all in different stages. The important thing is that we keep showing up to face whatever is in front of us, hard or easy. But we all have one thing in common. We all have the same target we're shooting for. Even if you say you don't have a goal, that is a sort of goal in itself, not to have goals. But we're all moving towards something. Every day, we have to get up and show up. Never discount the importance of showing up. The ancient proverb that says, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step," is so true. Let's use the example of a track workout. The first thing you have to do to execute the workout, after all the logistics, coordination, and planning, of course, is to show up at the track. That is a big step. There are many days when I just don't feel like it, but I show up anyway. Sometimes the day is just as hard as I think it will be, and sometimes it's better. The thing is, you don't know until you show up. Even when you have a bad day, you're one step ahead of many because you had the guts to show up. Showing up is completely underrated. Sure, there are days when it will be all but impossible to give everything you have to whatever you're doing, but you showed up. If you'll just show up, good things will happen. They're bound to. Maybe not on day 1 or even day 5, but eventually you'll find those good things. Keep showing up. It is worth it. If you've ever read through the Bible on any sort of schedule, you know that there are days when you just check it off the checklist. You'll read or maybe listen, and it will be exceedingly difficult to get into it and absorb it. But you do it anyway. You showed up. Inevitably, there will be a day when you don't expect it, and the Holy Spirit will overwhelm you. You may or may not be expecting it, but it happens. It is especially satisfying when it is one of those days when you're just showing up and your guard is down. But it won't happen if you don't show up. Checking things off a checklist can be so important. I can't count the number of times when I didn't feel like running, but I did it anyway. I had one of those days yesterday, and you know what happened? I felt terrible, worse than I've felt in a couple of weeks, but I showed up. Today, I'll show up again, and maybe, just maybe, I'll have one of those days when it all clicks and running feels incredibly easy. It may not happen, but I will never know unless I show up. Showing up, that's what I'm good at.
Oh yeah, everybody's good at that, you know.
Well, not everybody's good at that. That's the whole problem.
Showing up or showing up late. That's yeah.
Well, so many people are just never show up. They never try to. They never get started.
Yeah,
and for some people, they don't get the workouts in because they don't feel just right, you know, and so they never go, okay, I'm going to go do it anyway, even if I don't feel right, or I'm not going to. I can't run because it's too hot outside, or I can't run because it's too cold outside, or, you know, all the different excuses that people have. But
I'd rather run when it's not feeling right, because eventually you're going to feel okay and you're going to feel right.
Yep.
You know, I guess that's the runner's attitude. You know, it's like.
I think it is. I think that's part of why running is such a great activity.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people look at me and I've had people say it. Well, it's easy for you to run. And it's like, no,
it's not.
No, running is hard, and it doesn't matter, you know, what pace you're running at, and how long you've been doing it. Running's hard, and there are days when now I love it. Don't get me wrong, but there are days where it's just not easy to get out there.
A lot of people come up to me and say, you know, it's like you make it look so easy, and it's like, look, I have my bad days as well, and I know it.
Well, you know, it's a little bit like a preacher.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times we look at the preacher and we don't think about the preacher's problems, right?
Right.
Because he's a preacher. He doesn't have problems, but he does. He's just like us, but he happens to have a different job than we have.
It may be even worse because he's got all our problems as well.
That's exactly right.
You
That's
know.
exactly right. And so you got it's the same thing. When you see somebody out there, maybe you're one of those who you see somebody who makes it look really easy for them to get out and run, and you think, well, it's easy for them. Realize that they're like that preacher. It's not easy for them. They may make it look easy, but that's just by their positive attitude and them just getting out there and doing it.
Right, you know, and you never know what's happening after that, because it's like you can make it look easy, but once you get out of the view of anybody, you can let you may be able, you finally are able to let your guard down and say, Lord, thank you for getting me through this, because I'm absolutely whacked.
Yeah. Well, we all have issues. We're all different, have different issues, but we're all the same because we all struggle.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times we think about our differences more than we do our commonalities. And we need to realize that we have a lot of things in common too.
Yeah, that's the greatness about running, because it's like everybody's got the same problems you do on the road. Can I make it up that hill? How long is it to the next water station? You know, that sort of thing. My legs are so tired from all this running, you know.
Yeah. I remember when I was in college, we used to go to a Wendy's. There was a Wendy's right down from where our dorm was, and we used to go there late at night. Usually 3 or 4 days a week, we would close the Wendy's down. We'd be there until they closed. I think they closed at like 10 o'clock, and we'd be there. They'd kind of, at 10 o'clock, we realized, okay, they're cleaning everything up. We need to get out of here.
Yeah.
Anyway, we did that for a while. We developed a relationship with the people who were there that worked at the Wendy's. And it got to a point after a while where they would take all the extra food they had at 10 o'clock and they would give it to us. Now, I'm sure that was against their regulations to do that, but we had just developed this relationship with them. And so very often they would give us, a few burgers or some fries or whatever they had left over.
You're starving college students. I mean, come on.
And it was like a gold mine for us, you know? I mean, for us, that was a big, big deal. And they weren't, they weren't doing anything different or anything.
Well, and I think they probably felt good about it too, because it's like, as someone could, giving away that food, even though it may not have been policy, the other alternative was just to destroy it, throw it in the garbage bin, and that would have been a waste.
Yeah, it would. Well, the point is that us just showing up put us in a good position. Yeah. Right. And so very often for all of us, it's sometimes good things happen when we just continue to show up. When we continue to be there for that person who needs a little more Christ in their life. Sometimes us just showing up, we show up a dozen times and never have the real opportunity to have an impact on them. Right. But on that 13th time, we have the opportunity to have an impact. And just showing up and being ready when the time comes can be crazy important.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a Christian runner, you might find it hard to decide what to listen to while you run. If you're looking for positive and Christian music that will help you keep your pace, check out the Radioactive station on the new J Radio. We'll take care of picking the music so that you can concentrate on your run. Plus, you can count on us to make sure that the music is uplifting and encouraging. Check out jradio.com or download the app in your app store.
Okay, so every week I share a reason why running and or walking is so awesome. And this week, how about this? It is a positive addiction.
Yeah, great.
I thought about this for a long time. I remember back when I was in high school, my high school coach, he had a whole library of running books. But in amongst his running books, he had this book called Positive Addiction. And I read that book. And it was fascinating. Because there's all sorts of addictions, obviously. Yeah. Many of them really super negative and really destructive and really bad for us. But running is one of those things where, can we take it too far and be too addicted to running? Yes, we can. But for the most part, having an addiction to running is way better for you than having an addiction to a drug or to alcohol or to other things that can be really, really destructive to us, because we're actually doing something for ourselves that's good for us. And so I've seen I've got a couple of friends who were alcoholics and had a big time struggle with alcohol and became runners, and that running replaced the alcohol.
Yeah. When I was in the Navy, we had on board ship, we had a Marine Corps detachment, handled security, and we had a First Sergeant Mendez, and First Sergeant Mendez had invited a lot of people with the Marines to go out on runs during the day, and it changed a lot of attitudes on board ship. Of course, one of the fun things was when he had those runs on the flight deck when we were out at sea, suddenly it's like you're running and all of a sudden, wow, where'd that hill come from? Because we did a wave or something like that. I mean, I didn't think aircraft carriers could dance around on the water like that. They do.
I imagine. Wow, that's interesting. Well, so do you pay any attention to professional running?
I do from time to time, like during the World Championships. I'll watch a lot of it. If I can see, some of the bigger marathons, like the New York Marathon. Yeah. The day I had my heart MRI during my testimony, it was like when I first got out of there, the first thing I did was I went out and tried to find a TV set that had the Boston Marathon on.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So do you have any favorites, like athletes or?
No, I don't. I remember when I was a kid, I used to root for different athletes for some reason. It's like if a good example of 400 intermediate hurdles back in the 70s. The guy to cheer for was Edwin Moses because the guy never lost. Yeah. But, it's like these days when I watch a race, it's like I'm really not cheering for anybody because when they crossed the finish line with that time, it was like, that's awesome. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good stuff. Well, plugged or unplugged? Do you like to listen to music when you run, podcasts or anything like that, or do you like to just be with your thoughts?
I do it all the same way. Usually it's plugged if I'm running a long distance, like if I'm going anything over 10 miles, I'm plugged up.
Yeah.
If I'm doing my hill or my tempo runs, I'll stay unplugged for the most part.
Yeah. That's good.
Or I'll listen, it's like I usually listen to the podcasts when I've got time to sit there and just listen to them.
Yeah.
Especially Run for God podcasts. I've got to sit there and pay attention because if I don't, I'll miss something.
Well, how many days a week do you like to run?
I run 5 days a week.
Okay.
Usually the only days I don't run are Fridays and Sundays.
Okay. And then do a long run on Saturday?
Do a long run on Saturday, get my rest on Sunday, and then Monday morning start all over again.
Yeah. So. Well, good. Well, we already talked about your diet, but is there a particular like pre-race meal or anything like that you have a go-to for?
Yeah, I usually like going with a 6-inch sirloin with a little bit of rice and broccoli.
Okay.
And that gets me through. Matter of fact, it seems like I have better times every time I have that meal. So.
Well, good. Any like supplementation? Do you take vitamins or supplements or anything like that?
I do take a multivitamin now during the COVID pandemic, and I think this is what ended up with my sepsis and all this stuff. I was taking vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc picolinate, and a probiotic. And I was taking all of them every day, and I think that's what the problem was with my kidney stones, because once we got through all that, they did a 24-hour urine specimen on me, and they found really high elevated levels of calcium. So we went back and looked through what it was that could have possibly caused it, and it turned out it was probably the vitamin D, because one of the side effects is it can cause a lot of calcification.
Huh.
So I quit taking the vitamin D and just went to a multivitamin, and everything seems to turn out pretty well right now.
Well, good.
Yeah.
We're all different. I mean, because I take a good bit of vitamin D and vitamin C. Mm-hmm. I take zinc. I take iron. I take magnesium. I take potassium. Mm-hmm. I take what else? Seems like I could take a sinus medication.
Yeah.
But I take all that at one time.
Right.
All at the same time, every single day. And it never seems to be a problem. Matter of fact, if I don't take it, the main thing that I notice if I don't take it is my sinus stuff. I take Zyrtec, and if I don't take it, I can tell.
Well, the other thing is where I live, we've got really, really hard water.
Yeah. Does that make a difference?
Yeah, it does, because it's like you're living it's like where I live in East Tennessee. There are zinc mines all over the place. Yeah. So there's a lot of minerals floating around.
Of zinc in your water.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Epsom salt, ice, or neither bath?
Neither.
No?
Neither. It's like it's like I seem to enjoy the pain. I like waking up knowing I'm still, and if I feel myself hurting, it's like I know I'm still alive. It's a good day. So
good stuff.
I like to do a lot of stretching after a run. So
yeah. Oh, good.
And that helps.
That's good. Good. You like to run with people, by yourself? Do you have a preference?
I'm a loner. I'm a loner. And that's because I get up so early in the morning and go run.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm going to start doing now is I'm going to have to start looking for a running buddy on Saturdays, because it seems like my times are kind of plateauing right now.
Yeah.
And I'd like to get some help out of that.
Yeah.
So
always good to find somebody if you can, especially for those long runs.
Yeah.
So what do you think it means to listen to your body? I like to ask that question.
Listening to your body, it's real important, because it's like, listening to your body is the most important thing, because if there's something that doesn't feel exactly right, you got to pay attention to it more often.
So do you react to it right away, or is that how do you look at that?
Most of the time when I react to it, it's like I'll just try and slow myself down a little bit or try and regulate my pace a little bit better at first.
Yeah.
I don't like to react to them right away because it may be just a momentary thing and it may go away. Mm-hmm. Then again, it may be like the men's marathon of the World Championships this year where the Mongolian runner got out really, really too far out and he tore a hamstring at 10K.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I try not to. I know where the soreness is and where the injuries come.
Yeah.
So it's like, I know one of the things that, if I twang a hamstring, I am going to slow it down quite a bit. Now, if it's like a sore calf or something like that, I'm going to keep powering through it.
It really depends on everybody's body's different and learning enough about your own body to know what to pay attention to and what not to.
Yeah. And recently, it's like I said, it's not the legs and it's not my heart that's causing the problem right now. It's the lungs. If I crap out, it's like I got to stop for a minute and get myself, because of the humidity, give myself a chance to rest before I do something even more crazy.
Yeah. So do you record your runs or not?
They're all on my cell phone.
Yeah, you got them all.
Yeah.
In Garmin Connect, I guess. Strava, both.
I actually use Nike Run Club.
Okay.
And the reason why is because I don't have a Garmin.
Okay.
And when I tried using Strava, it was kind of like driving a German car. I didn't know which knob or button to hit.
Oh.
And it was kind of a surprise. So I just stayed with Nike Run Club. It's really easy to use. All you have to do is when you go in, first of all, choose what shoe you're using, whether or not you want to record the run in miles or kilometers. I always use kilometers because it's a lot easier to keep up that way.
Yeah.
And you can set it up for different ways, different configurations. Like for on my long runs right now or on races, I set myself a cutoff time. And I say, okay, I'm going to try and cover this much mileage in X amount of time. And what I do is when I finish the run or when I hit that cutoff time, if I don't make the cutoff time, what I do is I just stop the run there and then I just slow jog the rest of it back out.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah. It's kind of like a reverse fartlet.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's interesting. Huh. All right. Well, how about a trivia question for this next week? Our trivia question is this: how many calories does running burn? For a lot of people, well, I'm not going to say it. How many calories does running burn? That's a good question and one that's worth researching. So if you're the first person that has an answer to that question, send that to dean@runforgod.com. And if you're the first person to get that answer to me, then you're going to win $20 off in the Run for God store. So dean@runforgod.com. All right. I'm going to leave you with this motivational thought of the week. It comes from Tina Fey. I thought it'd be appropriate to find a comedian to end this one on.
Oh, yeah.
This podcast. So she said, "You can't be that kid standing at the top of the water slide overthinking it. You have to go down the chute." We've all seen that kid, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, go ahead, kid. Take the step. It's
just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. We overthink so much.
Yes.
Whatever it is you're thinking, I don't know if I can do it. Well, try it. Just take the first step and try it. And if you can't do it, then you can't do it, but you'll never know
right.
until you try it.
Exactly.
Right? Yep. Go ahead and do whatever it is. And if you're afraid of it, even more.
You might just overcome it.
Yeah, and you might find out it's really fun.
Yeah.
Yep, right. All right, well, David, we certainly appreciate you coming and sharing your time with us, your testimony, and your journey. And like we always say, everybody's journey is different. Yours is definitely different than most people's, and but one that we can all take something from. So we appreciate your willingness to come.
It was great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, folks, until next week. May God bless every step of every run and or walk. And go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.
For more information about the Run for God ministry, go to runforgod.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There's nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.